Hello, UK Crime Book Club. I am thrilled. I was delighted when I was asked if I would interview Katy Watson. And here we are. Big
I was pretty
smile.
delighted too.
So introduce yourself, and then I've got 1,000 questions for you.
1,000. Okay, we could be here a while. Hello. It's so lovely to be here. I'm really, really excited to be taking part today. My name's Katy Watson. I'm the author of The Three Dahlias, which is a handy copy right here, just waving your face, which is my debut crime novel, which came out last summer. And yeah.
So interesting that you said debut crime novel. Do you want to explain why you had to caveat that?
I'm
being careful with how I'm asking this because I don't know what you want to answer and what you don't. So
I'll answer anything. No, it's no big secret. I think it's a very open secret. I've been an author professionally for about a decade now. I've written children's novels, YA novels, romance, women's fiction, under a variety of different names. You can see a lot of them on the shelf behind me, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to say, actually, it's very, very obvious.
So, The Three Dahlias was actually, I think it might have been my 50th book in the end. I know I've written 55 now, so yeah.
Oh my, what, 55? Wow, okay.
I mean, some of them are quite short.
But still, 55 is a lot. There's no...
Well, yeah.
Quite an achievement.
Well, kept me busy, out of trouble, paid the mortgage.
We've got some hellos already. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Kaz. And thank you, Kaz, for... She's tagging and pinning. So we're at the top of the group. So, first of all, one of the things I noticed, hi, Laura, was when I picked up the book and realised the Three Dahlias were 3 women who all played Dahlia, I thought, oh my word, how on earth are you going to keep up with so many characters? But actually, you know them really well.
Yeah.
Which comes across.
It's funny, when I first started talking about this idea, it was in the middle of lockdown it was August 2020, and I was talking with my agent, and I was looking back at my notes for it because I've just started writing book 3, so I've been going back over all my old notes. And my early notes for the series talk about 3 not Marples. So basically, the basic premise of the idea was always it would be 3 actresses who were famous for having played the same fictional detective. And it couldn't be Miss Marple, obviously, because she's copyrighted, but the original idea was that. And my agent sort of said, so it's 3 older women who've all played this character. I was like, no, it's 3 women from different generations who've played her at different times. And so what I really wanted to look at was the 3 different women. We've got Posy, who's in her late 20s. We've got Caro, who's my age, she's about 40 odd. And we've got Rosalind, who's in her 60s. And they've all played this really iconic character in very different ways at very different times. And their lives are very, very different. And I loved the idea of bringing them together and making them friends and making them, investigate a murder together. But I had to know them really well. To go back to your question, I had to know them inside out to make that work. And that was my favourite part of the whole thing, was getting to know those 3 women. They are very, very real in my head.
Which, must have helped you to keep them all straight in your head, which one you were writing about at which moment. Because if you'd made them quite similar with very similar interests and similar ages, that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
For you and for the reader.
Yeah.
But Kaz said, how was it writing the 3 different incarnations of a character?
I think because they're actresses, it's a bit easier because they're all people who've played the same character, but they're not actually the same character.
That makes me feel like it would have been a bit harder, though, because they're all you're writing 2 facets of each woman.
Yes. Yeah, it all got very meta because you've got the whole fictional world of Dahlia Lively and their own interpretations of this character, plus who they actually are. There's layers. It took a while. But I think it's an interesting way to explore who each of the characters are through who they think Dahlia is as well. It's through their opinions on the character and how they play her. Also tells me a lot about who they are.
So did you start with kind of a basic bit about each one written down and then really get to know them as you developed them? Or did you have a very firm idea? Oh, okay.
Oh, it was very much, it was a one sentence. Because I was pitching it to my agent. I was like, so we've got the national treasure who, first played her in the movies in the 80s, and she's gone on to have this fantastic career, and you would know her voice the moment she spoke, you'd know her on screen. You've got Caro, who's in her 40s. She's only ever played this part. She is synonymous. She is Dahlia. She's the one everyone watched on telly for 13 years playing this part. She's never really done anything else, so it's a big part of who she is. And then you've got Posey, who is the troubled child star who's been out in the wilderness after some not great things in her life, and she's just starting to come back into acting again, coming back into the world again, and she's looking for a fresh start, and this role, playing Dahlia, is that for her. So I knew them on that sort of surface level. I knew what people watching them as actresses knew about them. I knew what you'd know if you picked up the celeb papers and read about them. And that's where I started. And then I went deeper to find out who they were under that.
Kaz wants to know, do you think with the Cosy series it's harder to get your sleuths involved in the crime?
I mean, harder than a police procedural for sure, because no one's going to say, this is your job, can you go and do this, please? I think finding a legitimate way for them to not just stumble across a crime, but have a reason to want to solve it, is absolutely sort of the biggest sort of first stumbling block with any Cosy crime. Is that, why would they care? Why does it matter to them that they need to solve this crime? In the Three Dahlias, it's because they're all being blackmailed, and that's the crime they're trying to solve to begin with. And then when it leads to murder, they're already involved. And then trying to persuade people to talk to them, to let them ask them questions. Why should they interview people? Why should anyone have to answer their questions? They're not the police. So trying to answer those questions took up quite a while.
Yeah, it did make it easy for yourself. It comes across effortlessly easy when you're reading it, but I just know you've had sleepless nights over this when you think of the level of detail.
So many sleepless nights. When we went to print with the proofs, I didn't sleep for a fortnight afterwards because I was just convinced I'd missed something really major, that there was something in there that didn't work. And it wasn't until we started getting the first reviews in where people liked it that I could sleep again. And I'm about to go through it all again with book 2. I was wide awake at 3 o'clock this morning going, it's too late now. It's gone to print.
Somebody's actually asked when is book 2 out. So we would normally go into this a little bit later on. We might come back to it again later, but just tell us a little bit. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, because it's available for pre-order.
It is available for pre-order. In fact, it's out in hardback on the 6th of July, and the paperback of the Three Dahlias is out on the 27th of April. So just saying.
So book 2 is A Very Lively Murder.
A Very Lively Murder, yeah.
Can you tell us anything about it yet, or not yet?
I think I can. I think the blurb is already up on Waterstones and Amazon, so I'm fairly sure I can.
It is actually, yeah.
In A Very Lively Murder, the Dahlias are brought together again because they are on set filming The Lady Detective with Posey starring as Dahlia. But there's some odd goings on, and they start to think that Rosalind's life might be at risk. So they call Caro up to help figure out what on earth's going on.
Well, okay. That's and it's a very unlikely friendship between the three of them, but that works really beautifully as well.
It's one of the things I like most. I've been very fortunate in my friends in my life, and I have a lot of friends from different generations. When I was just after I'd had my daughter, who is 14 now, and I was lost in that fog of new babiness, and after about a year, I just didn't quite know what to do with myself. And my husband said, you've got to leave the house. And I was like, okay, yeah, that might help. We'll start
Husbands
there.
are good at saying that, aren't they?
And I joined a choir. I joined a local ladies choir. And I'm still a member now. And we have members from the age of about 16 to about 80. Plus, in fact, more than 80. And the women I have met through that have been astonishing. And the friendships that have been made across the generations within that choir, because the thing we all have in common is singing. And I really like taking that idea and putting it in a book and going, the thing these three women have in common is murder. So, yeah, it's a sweet thing.
That is one way of looking at it. I absolutely love it when I open a book and there's a country house of some description. I opened it and automatically, you've got the beautiful gardens and the cocktails, and it's just, and I just thought, that's where we need to actually go and do this interview. We need to go and sit in a garden somewhere with a cocktail.
Maybe not in
just
February.
Enjoy the view. I don't know. I quite like the cold. I'd be all right. Plus, I am the woman who always has numerous blankets everywhere I go, so be okay with that. But why the country house? Why was that always an idea? Is that something you've always wanted to do?
I wanted to do a really classic cozy crime. I wanted to take all the things I loved about golden age crime growing up. I mean, I devoured these books, and I wanted to take everything I loved about them and make it modern day. I wanted to make it completely contemporary. But obviously, the contemporary world comes with things like mobile phones and other things that make things a little bit more complicated. So I wanted that closed circle mystery. I wanted the country house murder. But I needed a way to make it work in a modern day. And I didn't, it's set at high summer, so I couldn't snow them in, which is my default. But instead, I made it an immersive 1930s fan convention for the novels of Lettice Davenport. So it's at the house where the author of the Dahlia Lively books lived. And so everybody is joined at this house. You get the proper classic house thing, except also it's a fan convention. And that made it more fun for me.
That was a really interesting idea as well, because how do you open up a full cast of characters in a stately home or in a hotel in the middle of nowhere, or how is it that you bring lots of people together? So I thought that was a really interesting idea.
And it was fun because it gave me 3 different groups of suspects, each one connected to one of the Dahlias. So we had the fans, who are mostly there to see Caro, who's come in full costume as Dahlia on a motorcycle with sidecar that she stole from the set when they finished filming, and she's the classic Dahlia. So you've got the fans who all know her. You've got the film crew who are there promoting the new movie they're about to start making. They're announcing that Cosy is the new Dahlia. And so you've got the people involved with the film there, because there's a lot of stuff going on with the film that's getting a bit iffy as well. But you've also got the family of Lettice Davenport, who still own the house, and who Rosalind, the eldest Dahlia, is friends with and has connections with as well. So it was a neat way of bringing in different groups of people.
So Lettice Davenport. Now, I was not the first person I found that thought that these were real excerpts. So each chapter starts. Do you want to explain how each chapter starts? And then I'll get to the question.
Has a quote from one of the Dahlia Lively novels as written by Lettice Davenport, or sometimes an interview with Lettice Davenport, I think. But obviously these books don't exist. The Dahlia Lively books were never written. I have since written a short story, a Dahlia Lively short story that's available on my website. But yeah, I made them all up. I've got a big bibliography. Lettice Davenport apparently wrote like 77 full-length novels and short stories. And I've got titles for a lot of them. I've got notes on what they're all about. I've got excerpts. I've got all these things. I just don't actually have the books because I just made them up.
I'm not the first person that thought they were real, though, am I?
No, quite a few people have asked. And that's fantastic. I love that people think this might be real. But in order to get around, copyright law and stuff, it had to be about a fictional
Would you consider writing books as Lettice Davenport, as that pseudonym, and writing these books?
I have not ruled it out. I had so much fun writing my Dahlia Lively Christmas short story that I sent out.
Deck the Halls.
Yeah,
that was
Dahlia Decks the Halls. Yeah. It was so much fun. I would absolutely love to write some more of those. In fact, I think my agent liked that more than any of the other things I've sent her recently. So.
Well, frustratingly, I only discovered it today, so I haven't read it yet. So that's what I'll be doing later on.
Well, Christmas in January or February, it's a classic.
Absolutely. I'll take Christmas any time of year. I really like things where it's cold and the weather is so atmospheric anyway. Especially where I live in Manchester. We've constantly got, we rarely get the weather.
Well, you'll love A Very Lively Murder then, because they're filming in Wales in February. So
See,
It's a
now I
bit
would
silly.
love that.
I did have to go through and take out a few references to the weather because my agent is always my first reader, and she came back and went, I think we get it. It's raining. I'm like, yes, but it is, because it's February in Wales. It's raining.
Comes in sideways,
Yeah,
like
I have to
that.
take some of those out. So you don't quite so many. It's possibly slightly sunnier and drier than in reality, but you know.
My friend has holiday cottages in Abergele in Wales, and it's one of my favourite places in the world. And yeah, they get snowed in. They get the wind and the rain is madness.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it there, and it's gorgeous.
I grew up in North Wales. That's where my family
Oh,
lives.
really?
So yeah.
So how much do you think your upbringing, you were saying about reading different things and all the mysteries that you read growing up, how much of an impact has that had when it comes to what you actually put into your books?
A lot, I think. I'm not even sure if I realised how much until the reviews started coming in for the Three Dahlias, because so many people commented on how it was, a loving pastiche. It was an homage, and all these every classic possible trope you could get from a murder mystery was in there, and that is what I wanted to do. I'm glad that it came across. I think I wanted to read this book, and so I wrote it. I wanted to read a contemporary golden age country house murder with these women in it, and so I had to write it. But I just threw everything that I loved about those books into it.
Do you think Rosalind, Caro and Posey have been received in the way that you thought you'd written them?
I think so. I think when people have spoken to me about it, or when I've read things people have written about it, people tend to focus in on the friendship, and that's absolutely what I wanted people to get out of it. It's the strength in female numbers. It's women working together. That's what I wanted, and I'm thrilled that came across.
I really love the fact as well that you've not just written one generation of women. Obviously you've had things from your own life that have impacted that, experiences that have impacted that. But I really love that, because so often it would be easy to just keep one generation and work in a friendship group, people, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely brilliant. School friends that have all gone together and then go off on a holiday somewhere, or university friends, or cousins, or there's so many different things. But I love the different layers that you get from those friendships.
That is definitely something I wanted to put in. I love groups of friends, or cousins and family, and that sort of things very much. But I really wanted to explore how the different generations see the world around them and the people around them, the different things they have. I think in A Very Lively Murder we get a little bit more of that, because we've got them on a film set. We've got the different views of how women are seen, especially actresses, and how they are viewed. And Caro is at the start of book 2, she's struggling to find work because she's turned 40 and no one wants to cast her as anything anymore. She's not too young for the grandma roles, she's too old for the younger roles. There's nothing there. She's just failed to nail the audition for playing the mum in the cereal advert. It's that kind of thing where women become invisible in the middle there. I wanted to, and the way that Posey is judged for her past and what she does next. Those are the different ways different women are seen at different ages. Is something I wanted to explore.
So with Dahlia Deck the Halls, we should say that you can get that by going to your website, which is katywatson.co.uk.
It is, and you just have to sign up for my newsletter, and I promise to send you fascinating things. I've got all sorts of fun things planned to send you, actually.
Nice. I'm signed up, so I'll look forward to seeing what comes through. How often do you update? I know some authors I know Mark Billingham, I get an email every few months. It's very rare. Some authors are very good at monthly or weekly or fortnightly.
I send on the first Friday of every month, and then as things get a bit busier around releases, or I find something really cool, send you maybe every couple of weeks.
Brilliant. So katywatson.co.uk for anyone who wants to sign that up. Oh, Sarah Blackburn says, I know you said that you have notes. How do you keep track? Do you use a spreadsheet?
I use everything. I've got these 2 notebooks here are completely full of notes for the
They're
first
beautiful.
They're gorgeous. It makes it easier when you have pretty stationery. But I also use, spreadsheets. And also I use a writing program called Scrivener, which has all my note cards and has all my different notes and annotations and stuff. And I write everything down because it doesn't stay otherwise.
How much of it is planned before you get writing? Are you really super organised? Are you somewhere in the middle?
I plan everything. I have a very comprehensive plan before I start. And then I have a completely different plan by the time I've got to the end of the first draft. I always need to know the basics. I need to know who did it and why and how, and mostly why. Why is really important to me. I think with the Three Dahlias and with the one I'm writing now, which is book 3, which is at the moment called 7 Lively Suspects. We'll see if that sticks. I have a couple of options for who done it and why, and I'm narrowing it down as I write. But
so the ending could change.
It could change. It did in the Three Dahlias. The ending of the Three Dahlias is not the same as it was in the first draft. Yeah. don't say more.
Obviously, you can't really say anything more than that.
No, it's different. But yeah, with A Very Lively Murder, I knew very much from the start who and why and how. But yeah, book 3 still up for debate, but I'm still the first draft, so a lot of things can change before I get to a publication on that one.
Sarah said she loves your notebooks as well.
They are so pretty.
And Karen's saying, hi Karen, she loves the idea of the, it sounds really interesting. She likes the idea of the friendships.
Oh, thank you.
And so, yeah, the thing that you wanted people to focus on, I'm glad that that's kind of what's come through for me as well. So how much do the friendships develop in ways that you didn't expect as you're writing? Does it take on a life of its own, or are you really very sure of where it's going before you start?
I think I've got an idea, but they've become much more protective of each other than I expected them to quite quickly. I knew how I wanted things to develop. I knew that they start off very wary of each other, a bit dismissive of each other, and I knew that as they learn to get to know each other more, that friendship builds so that by the end of the first book, they've built a sort of cautious trust. Yeah. I didn't expect that when I wrote the short story between book 1, the set between book 1 and book 2, they spent Christmas together. I mean, who knew? They did. They all went together for Christmas. And it meant that by book 2, at the beginning, you actually get the scene at the end of book 1 that hints at what happens at the beginning of book 2, which is Posy and Rosalind phoning up and asking Cara to come to Wales to the film set. The fact they trust her enough that they need her there, that they can't do it without her. And yeah, so it built a lot faster than I thought. They rely on each other quite a lot very quickly. And they are very protective of each other. But also they each develop their own place in the investigative trio. They each have their own strengths, and they each have their own areas where they excel. So
yeah, they all have their own instincts and it all gels together. I want you to show us the inside of the front of the Three Dahlias.
It is really pretty. Hang on. I'm guessing what you want to see. Wow, I don't know. Start with the map.
Just gorgeous.
But not just maps. Not just maps, people. We've got floor plans. Yes, we have. We've got 3 floors of them. I won't show you them all. But yes. And also, we have a cast list at the beginning for the convention. I was thrilled to get those in there. And they're based off the ones I did when I was writing it. In order to keep everything straight, I'd made my own, and we sent them over to the designer, and they made them look much better, which was nice. And there was only one slight panic when I suddenly realised, after I just signed off the proofs, that I hadn't changed one of the names. One of the character names had changed. I hadn't changed it on their bedroom, on the floor plan, but we did get it done in the end, so it's okay.
Oh, that's good. Was there anything else with I've asked this earlier today. Was there anything that you couldn't go any of the scenes that somebody felt went too far and you had to kind of rein them back in to fit the genre?
No, I don't think there was. I mean, there's always bits that get trimmed or cut or scenes that just don't work, but there wasn't anything that didn't fit the story or the genre. I think the way I write was never going to be particularly gory. My mother wouldn't read it. If it was, she always thinks things are too gritty for her. My mum's happy level is Murder, She Wrote. So, that's what we go for.
I am a huge fan of Murder, She Wrote. And yeah, my mum's the same. If most of the books that are behind me here, she would be horrified. We would be seriously clutching pearls at some of the things that I read. So, she gets given a lot of cozy stuff, even some golden age is a bit much.
Yeah, they can be, because some of them are really quite dark.
Because people really think that golden age are cozy, and they really don't necessarily go hand in hand.
No, not always. And even the ones that are, I mean, some of the stories and the murders in there can be quite gruesome. It's just they're told in a particular way that makes you feel safe.
Yeah. So is book 3 finished, or is that the one that you are literally writing?
Yeah, book 3 is very not finished. No. No, I'm writing it right now. And yeah, that will be out summer next year, hopefully.
So are we thinking kind of every July there'll be the next one in the series?
I'm contracted for 3. So this is the last one on my contract. But if you all go out and buy it, then maybe.
I'm those pre-orders in.
We'll see. I'd love to write some more. I'd love to do at least another 3. And I've got ideas for another 3, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll just entertain myself writing Dahlia Lively short stories. Who knows?
As long as you send them to me as well. Sarah wants to know if you've read the Martin Edwards, Rachel Savanate Golden Age mysteries. So not just Martin Edwards, though. Have you read, do you read widely within the genre?
I have done. I think I read very widely generally because I write in several different genres still. I have to read quite widely in lots of different genres. So yeah, I've read a lot of Golden Age mysteries, but a lot of them I haven't read in a long time, which I think I didn't realise until quite recently, because obviously in my head 1996 is about, what, 8 years ago maybe?
Yeah, not that long ago, yeah.
But I read so many, but when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And in my early 20s. And then I didn't. They all still live on in my head, but I haven't necessarily gone back and read them. So I'm actually going back and I'm rereading my way through all the Agatha Christie's at the moment. I'm reading the Miss Marples, which, again, I know I've read and I know I remember a lot of them, but not all of them. There are a few that I don't. But I'm going back and reading them now. And I was always a Poirot girl. Always. But reading those Marples now, I think I take something very, very different from them, and I'm switching teams.
Oh, controversial.
Team Cherry Brandy all the way.
You brought some books with you to remind you of things that you've enjoyed.
I did.
I was very impressed with, because it's the one thing that I normally say to authors, and I'd forgotten to tell you, but look, Claire, you did it anyway. So
I like to be organised. Well, one of the things I did bring to show you was, apart from reading, the Agatha Christie's, Dorothy Sayers, and all those, which I have very vivid memories of listening to a lot of the Dorothy L. Sayers books on audiobook, because my library had them. And I listened to a lot of them with hangover after nights out when I was about 18, 19. So that always linked weirdly in my head. But one of the authors I really, really loved, and possibly the one that really got me into cozy crime in a way, were the MMK murder mysteries. And she's more famous for historical fiction. She wrote The Far Pavilions and The Shadow of the Moon. And I loved those because my family connection, my grandmother and my father and my aunt were all born out in India and lived out there. And my grandma never came over to this country until the late 50s. And so she would always give me these books about India, and often colonial India. But I always loved them because they were my connection with her. And so when I discovered that MMK also wrote murder mysteries, that was sort of my first in, and they're all set in different parts of the world. So this book is a 3-in-1, but I picked up when I was in Australia after I graduated, I think, and I carried it around traveling with me for months. And this one's got death in Zanzibar, there's death in Kashmir, there's death in Cyprus, death in Berlin, and there are all these very classic English murder mysteries set in places around the world. But they're set really interestingly, mostly after World War II. So it's as the empire's being dismantled. You have these sort of last outposts of British rule in these places, or as the Brits are moving away, and murders. And yeah, that they were probably my first, after reading all the Agatha Christie's as a teen, these were when I came back to Cosy Crime and found my way back in then. So those are my sort of long ago ones. Oh, and also Mary Stuart, Touch Not the Count. Classic one. I don't know why. I haven't read it in years, and I saw it in my bookshelf and thought, oh, read that again. But then I was also, I'm a romance author, I'm a women's fiction author, and there's quite a lot of great crossover between romance and crime as well. And Jenny Cruzy does it particularly well. This is a long-time favourite of mine, Agnes and the Hitman. But then more recently, I'm reading this one at the moment. It's not out, I don't think yet. When is it out? Oh no, it is out. It's just out. The Swifts, Beth Lincoln. I'm reading that at the moment because my agent sent it to me and she said, you're going to love it because it's a middle grade murder mystery, and I love kids' books and murder mysteries. So that's good. And the other one I really enjoyed recently was The Agency for Scandal, which is a historical YA murder mystery, which also, sort of murder mystery. And yeah, so those are the ones that I brought with me. Oh, and I brought this one because this Agatha Christie's Secret Notebooks, which I'm sure you've seen, this was what I read when I first had the idea for the Three Dahlias. And I thought, if I have to create a murder mystery author, I'm not one yet, so I don't know what they do. I read through, and the insights from Agatha Christie's Secret Notebooks were a huge help in creating not so much the character of Lettice Davenport, but the legacy she left behind. And different things in the house and the notebooks and things like that. I use a lot of things from that. So yeah, there you go.
When it comes to you working on different projects, so obviously under different pseudonyms, not going to ask you to name them all unless you want to. Are you working on one project at a time, or are you juggling deadlines?
I need to write at least 4 books this year, possibly 5, and that's what I've done for the last 10 years. That's how I've made a living as an author. I'm very fortunate to be able to do it, but I work pretty hard at it as well. So there's always a little bit of juggling. I'm very much focused on the Dahlias at the moment. That's where my heart is right now. So that's my big focus. But at the same time, I'm talking to other editors I've worked with for years about projects for them. I'm writing up proposals. Once I finish this first draft of 7 Lively Suspects, I will take a few weeks off to write another romance. And then I'll edit that, and then I'll get back to revising 7 Lively Suspects. And having other projects to work on in between means that I take a break away from a manuscript and then I come back to it fresh. So I find that helps me.
Yeah, I'd imagine so, because when you're kind of looking at something that you've written and maybe editing it, you do need that break in between, don't you? Because otherwise you're just not going to spot the things that you've maybe got an idea of it in your head, and that comes across as you're reading it. Your brain almost adds things that aren't actually on the page.
All the time. Absolutely all the time. And I do find that is something I do need to space away from it, because otherwise my brain's just filling in the stuff I assume I put there. My number one conversation with my agent after she's read any of my drafts is, "You never explained this." I went, "Didn't I? It's in my head. Never made it on the page." Every time. So yeah, I not only need time away, I need someone else to point these things out to me.
And alongside all of that, you're doing events like this, you're doing in-person events. We've actually met at Crime Central in Manchester when you were invited by Rob Parker to do that event. So how do you juggle everything? And do you do events as all of your author names?
Yes. Not as many now. Not as many. When I was writing children's and young adult books as Katy Cannon, which is my maiden name, I did a lot of events, but I've sort of stepped back from that and replaced it with the crime. So I'm not doing as many school visits. I'm not doing as many YA events and things. So that's helped there. And then the romance and women's fiction, I just don't do as many events for those, which is just as well, really, because I don't have the time.
School visits must be interesting as an author.
Yeah.
You're going into an environment where, you're going to be seeing different ages and different personalities, definitely. As somebody who worked in a school for a long time, no two children are the same.
No. And it was always fun when I would go in and do events for teenagers, because you'd have some who were absolutely fascinated, wanted to know everything, and others who just had no interest whatsoever. So trying to get the attention of it. I wrote a lot of YA romance as well, so trying to get the boys interested was always, more of a challenge, but we got there. So finding ways to make it interesting was always good. But I recently did, as a sort of bonus, I didn't want to join the PTA at my son's school. So I gave them a week of free writing workshops for every year group instead.
Nice.
So I went in and I did every single year group, from the nursery kids all the way up to year 4, which is where his school finishes. And I did sort of tailored events for each year group. And then I went back in the following week to go through and do some follow-up work with them. And it's just fascinating seeing how their understanding and their interest in story develops, and that even the really littlest tots could totally get behind the idea of coming up with a story. We sat there and we came up with a story together. Each class wrote a story with me in the course of the session, and then they went away and either drew a picture or talked to an adult about it, or they acted it out, or they wrote it, depending on the level of ability of the child, they could do it however worked for them. And it's wonderful. I mean, I can't do it very often because it absolutely wipes me out, but it's so lovely to see. It's so lovely to see the kids loving story.
It absolutely is, yeah. I remember when I used to love just reading out picture books to the children. And in the juniors, we used to read a book, 15 minutes at the end of lunchtime each day to get them settled and ready for the next bit. And I loved that. But what I realised when I came to do this and I was reading something out, I can't read out grown-up books. I go really flat. I don't know. Whereas for a kid's picture book, I can be really lively. But the second you put me in front of an adult to read something out, I develop a weird accent. It's very odd. Do you ever get any kind of nerves like that with anything, or are you just very happy to just get on with things?
I think I've been doing things long enough that I just get on with it. I studied drama and trained in drama for a long time, so I think any sort of stage fright I have, I still get nervous, but then I get up there and I just get on with it.
I think nerves are good, though.
I think my first ever writing event, the first ever author event I ever did, was back in 2014, when my YA novel Love, Lies and Lemon Pies had just come out, or was just coming out, and I got invited to speak at the Hay Festival. And that was my first ever event, was at the Hay Festival, and I was blown away by this. And I was sitting in the green room with my 4-year-old daughter at the time, and she had her little tablet on and she was listening to Frozen on her headphones, singing along to Frozen in the middle of the green room at the Hay Festival. And I suddenly realised the guy sitting across from us was Benedict Cumberbatch, and he was trying to practice Frozen. And that was my first moment of going, okay, well, this is a whole new world, and I'm going to have to get used to this quite quickly.
Sarah's asked if you're going to Harrogate this year. But are you going anywhere this year? Have you got events planned?
I am going to Harrogate. I'm going to Harrogate. I'm just going. I went last year for the first year, and I had such a blast that I'm definitely going back this year.
Yeah, this will be my first year.
It was last year. The first day was the day that Three Dahlias came out. So my entire family came with me to Harrogate. My husband, both my kids, my mum and dad, my brother and his boyfriend. We were all there, and we had a fantastic time. It was my first crime event. It was my first time being a crime author anywhere, and I loved it. It was so much fun. So I'm going back this year, but I'm going on my own this year. So I can, I don't know, cut loose. I don't know. Maybe I'll drink 2 tonic waters in the bar instead of 1. I don't know. We'll go wild.
Sarah said it's going to be her first time at Harrogate as well this year.
Oh, well, come and find me, Sarah.
So, I know Kaz went last year. I was supposed to go for various reasons. I didn't end up there. But yeah, this will be my first one, and I'm excited.
It's going to be good.
So tell me what to expect.
Well, I don't really. I did my first one last year, and I tried to make the most of it that I could. And so my mum and I got tickets for a variety of different sessions, and we went and did that. And I was interviewing Rosemary Schrager at the Crime Vault event while we were there, which was just because I was there anyway, so they wrote me in. And so I did a lot of sort of running around doing things for that. So I don't really know. I think the bar is great. The bar's really good. And the events are just fantastic. And yeah, I think just the atmosphere of it was so, I'm not really sure, not quite inspiring, not quite uplifting. It just felt good to be there, you know, with all these other people who really loved the same things I loved. I found it lovely.
I did say, didn't I, that when we were in London last year, I just walked around like a wide-eyed child the whole time. I was just full of wonder.
It was just brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah. I just absolutely loved every minute. My profile picture on Twitter is one that Mike Craven, MW Craven, who is behind me here, with Fearless, he took a photo of me because I was sat with Sean. Oh my word, SJ Cosby. I couldn't think of his last name for a moment then. And I was sat, we're having a conversation, and he was telling us about his wife and how wonderful his wife is and chatting away. And this whole weekend, I just had this look of wonder on my face. And he just took this photo and sent it to me. And it was really lovely, really nice. But it's inspiring, but it's also quite a relaxed thing. And you're looking at, you know, you're meeting different people. But who have you been excited to meet? I did try and say hello to Rosemary Schrager in London, but I got distracted talking to somebody, and she just marches. She just marched down the field, did her event, marched back up, and she was gone.
Oh, I got to hang out with her a bit in Harrogate, and she was lovely. I got to meet Mike Craven in London when you did that. Was very exciting. And when I was in Harrogate and also again in London, I got to hang out with Sophia S.J. Bennett, which was really lovely for me because we used to write for the same YA publisher. So we met about 8 years ago at an event, and you know, that was lovely. And then I've never seen her since, but she very kindly read an advanced copy of The Three Dahlias and said lovely things about it. And so to get to meet her again and to hang out and chat and, you know, catch up on everything that has changed in our careers and our lives in the last 8 years was really lovely.
Just having a look who said that. Tony Millington said, "Can't wait for Harrogate."
Oh, it's gonna be fun.
I know I was supposed to meet him there last year, him and his lovely wife, and I didn't go. So never mind. But we will. We'll go this year. So there's so many questions I've got for you. Did you? This is a really mean question.
Oh, good.
Do you have a favourite incarnation of Dahlia Lively?
I can't play favourites with my book children. No, I don't. I think it depends. Often it's whichever one I'm writing. I'm in their head.
I can understand that.
They're my favourite. I love them all for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
And I think Cara was probably the one who's closest to me in age, so I have a bit of a connection with her. Rosalind I love because she reminds me of not quite my mum and not quite my aunts, but sort of some combination of
Yeah.
a variety of slightly older women that I know and love. And she's great. She's who I want to be when I grow up. So that's great. And I have a very big soft spot for Posey because, yeah, I was never a child film star, and I've never struggled with any of the things she had to struggle with. But I still have that memory of being that age and still trying to figure things out, and that's sweet too.
I think that's pretty much how I expected you to answer, that there was going to be an element of each of them that you had a soft spot for. And I think, I think that's what comes across. I think it's a really nice way. The way they interact with each other, you can almost kind of see the way you felt about them as you were writing them.
Oh, that's nice.
That makes sense. So we've covered quite a lot already. What is on your reading list?
Oh, it's so long.
I think this is probably the meanest question I could possibly ask. Knowing what's on my reading list, knowing how much there is on there,
I mean, I could pull
knowing
up
what I've got coming up.
I'm not sure the battery will take it. It's too lengthy. So I'm doing my Miss Marple reread, and I'm also doing the Read Christie 23. So I need to read my February book for that still. So that's what I'm reading tomorrow. So that's quite high up. And then I've got a few books I'm waiting to come out. Yeah, I think I've got to read The Swift. I haven't read that yet. I've got some middle grade books I need to write for a project I may or may not be doing. I've got a lot of research reading to do, but research in genre rather than non-fiction, if that makes sense. So,
do you avoid reading the genre that you're writing at the time that you're writing it?
A little bit. I think I couldn't read any new crime books now while I'm writing the Dahlias. I couldn't read anything too close to it.
Right.
I'm all right with Agatha Christie. I'm all right with the class. I've read them before. They're more familiar. That's fine. I couldn't read something new in case that was influencing. But yeah, so I do tend to read whatever I'm not writing, which again is handy because it means I can keep up on the market in different genres in between.
On the topic of research, has anything you found out surprised you? You know, have you gone looking for something specific and found it's something completely different than what you expected?
Maybe not completely different, but I'm always I'm very, very fortunate that I've got some great police advisors in my life. My brother's boyfriend is a detective. I have a friend who is a police officer locally, and I have a ex-DCI as a friend who very kindly does a last read of all my copy edits to make sure I haven't screwed anything up too massively. And I always find their insights fascinating. Like if I go to them with is this a thing? You know, could this be a thing? And they'll either come back with, oh yeah, that could totally be a thing, or actually no, and this is why. And it's always fascinating. They always come up with things I don't even know I don't know. Like when I get Dave to check over sort of scene of crime things, or as a rule, I try to keep the police out of my way as much as possible because I'm not an expert and I'm not writing a police procedural. I'm writing cozy. I'm writing amateur detectives who are stumbling around not knowing things, and I'm fine with that. But where the police are involved, I want it to be fair and as accurate as I can make it, which is not always 100% accurate, but it's as accurate as I can make it within the confines of the story. And yeah, I'm always amazed at the sort of insights I get from them as they check things over or as I go to them with questions. You know, as they're flying off on their holiday and I'm texting going, yeah, but just before you get on the plane, could you just tell me?
There is a fine line, isn't there, with fiction readers, that they do expect quite a level of authenticity, but they will occasionally let you get away with some things.
Yeah.
They're very specific on the things that you're allowed to get away with. And that must be quite tricky to find the line because you're not writing a textbook, you're not writing a police procedural. You do sometimes need things to bend the rules a little bit to fit.
Yeah.
But
I mean, just the very fact of the police giving information to amateur outsiders, it's instantly a bit of a, but they wouldn't, would they? So trying to find a way that works within the text. So like in the Three Dahlias, I know I have a couple of occasions where they're trying to get information, and I know they can't ask outright for it, they can't be given it, but they can try and find a sideways way to get it, or they can hint at something they already know, or they can give something else up. And I generally just flag all those bits to Dave and go, can I get away with this? And every now and again his notes are, we couldn't do this, but I understand this has to happen for the story, and you've mitigated it well enough, I'll let you have it. So.
What about actually visiting places that you've gone to for research? Is a lot of it just completely made up, or have you visited the places to see, to get kind of a feel, a vibe before you put it onto the page?
All my locations are fictional, which helps. Aldermere, where the first book is set, is a mishmash of every National Trust property I've ever been to. And I've been to a lot of National Trust properties. That's something where I took different bits of things. One near us, Wimpole Hall, has a folly in the garden, like Aldermere does, but the house is a completely different age. And lots of different bits sort of pastiche and put together. It's a composite picture. And then A Very Lively Murder is set up in a fictional village in North Wales, not very far away from where I grew up, which again, it's an area I know very well, but it doesn't really exist, so it can do all the things I needed it to do for the sake of the plot. So that was good.
And you won't have anybody writing to you and saying, well, that roundabout doesn't go there.
Exactly.
That doesn't do that. And that's uphill, not down.
Seven Lively Suspects actually starts out, doesn't start out, but the first section of it is set at a crime festival. So look out for things you recognise that I have stolen from many crime festivals around the world.
I was going to say, have you kind of picked different bits from different ones? Yeah. So you've not literally just changed Harrogate a little bit?
To some degree, but I've also added in some other bits. So it'll all work out in the end. But yeah, it's supposed to be familiar. You're supposed to go, oh yeah, I've been to places like that, or yes, I know the sort of place they mean, but without it being an actual place. So I can play fast and loose with where roads go and what happens.
One less thing to worry about. Laura said she needs to read the February Read Christie 2023 as well, and that dramatic license is very fickle.
Oh, it is.
I think when I'm reading something, I'm quite happy to just kind of let it go and just accept it as part of the book.
Yeah. It's
very rare that things would irritate me to the point that I'd put the book down. I can't remember anything off the top of my head where that's happened.
No, and I'm always more invested in the characters and the action than, for example, the setting. So I think unless it's somewhere that like the back of your hand and it's going to be jarring for it to be wrong, it wouldn't bother me. But I say that's why I quite like making up my own places.
Making it up, yeah. I know Brian McGilloway, when I interviewed him, he was saying that the story that he'd written about the missing teenager, he didn't want it to be set in a real place. He wanted to just take all the elements of that away from, accidentally writing something that was real about somebody that he didn't know ever existed, for example. So he just made up this place, and he's not the first and won't be the last author to do so.
No.
It's quite a brave thing to write something A, completely made up, and B, set in a real place. I don't know what would be scarier.
I think when I've written books set in real cities or real places, and if I'm writing it set in London, that's fine. I can go and look at that. I can go and do that. If I'm writing in a place I've never been, I have to keep things pretty vague, and I have to do as much internet research as I can. But you're never going to quite, I can watch a lot of videos of a place. I can look at the maps. I can try and figure it out. But I'm always going to be a little less certain about it.
You just said the word watch, and it's made me think of things that I've watched recently. Have you watched anything good that you can tell us something about without spoilers? I'm well aware that some people are not yet caught up with Happy Valley, and it's not available in America yet, as one of my lovely friends told me. He's not going to be watching it until, I believe it was May.
I've never
so
seen
did
Happy
you watch
Valley.
it? No. Okay.
My mum's watched it, so it must be suitable for me, which is normally my
your
mum watched it. Yeah, I know.
Your mum, who only likes cosy things,
Well,
watched Happy Valley.
She said it was good enough that she could manage it. I mean, I'm like, it's no Death in Paradise, Mummy, you sure? But no, she's watched it.
Ooh, okay.
So
go, Mum.
She's obviously working on it, but no, I've not seen it. I don't get a great deal of TV time, just because of the way things work here. And when I do, I quite often watch it with my teenage daughter. So we've been rewatching.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't recommend watching this with
exactly.
No.
So I've been watching a lot of things with her recently. So we've been looking for things that were more her level. I'm trying to think of the name of the thing we just watched that was fantastic, and I'm not going to be able to remember it now, am I? No,
I've put you on the spot. I tend to not watch many new things. I watch reruns of things like Frasier, over and over and over again. And Tipping Point, I've got a thing about the coins falling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I like that.
We've been watching highlights of my teenage years. We've watched the whole of Buffy the Vampire Slayer recently, for instance, and
not watched that for a while.
We watched The West Wing, which she was absolutely hooked on. So
never seen The West Wing.
Favourite show ever.
Yeah. Okay. On the list.
And she said it was really funny because we'd watched The West Wing and she'd loved it so much, and we were trying to find something to watch next. And she said, I just want there to be more episodes of The West Wing. And I was like, I know how you feel. I was like, that's why I wrote The Three Dahlias. I just wanted there to be more of those things, but anyway, we're now watching The Newsroom, which was also by Aaron Sorkin. So that's the closest I could get it. I'm going to look and see very quickly if I can find the name of the show.
And I'll have a quick look at these comments while you're doing that. So Sarah's saying Vera and Endeavour. Haven't seen either of those.
I've seen some Endeavour, and I know my mum is also hooked on that one. So, yeah.
Laura's saying personally she's happy for dramatic license to be bent and stretched. Only the feats of superhuman strength / survival from mad injury I get a bit I really don't mind that. I think sometimes I don't really need every character to be realistic. Sometimes I think as long as the story's good, you can go along with the character who gets hit by a truck and keeps running.
I mean, we do
sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah. I think you suspend disbelief in action movies. It's not very different. Lockwood and Co. was, of course, the show.
Right, okay. I haven't seen that.
It's fantastic. It's British supernatural murder mystery, sort of ghost hunting thing. And it's great because we've been watching a lot of American teen shows where the teenagers are going out and they're partying and they're drinking and they're living these incredibly adult lives. And then we watched Lockwood and Co, where mostly they're drinking tea and eating biscuits and occasionally fighting ghosts, and it felt so much more realistic.
Absolutely love that. It's almost 8 o'clock. Now we did say, didn't we, that it wasn't going to be this was going to be no chore tonight.
Well, I think we figured out that we could chat happily for an hour whether anyone else joined us or not. So
absolutely. Thank you to everyone who has joined and asked questions. Give us a recap of everything that you've done, everything that's coming up, anything that you want people to go and buy.
Okay.
Anything at all.
The Three Dahlias is out in hardback at the moment. It's actually reduced at the moment on Amazon to just over £10, I think. I don't know why, but I just spotted it this morning. So if you haven't picked it up, it will be out in paperback in late April. And the sequel, A Very Lively Murder, will be out in July in hardback. And I would love it if you would come and join me over on my Dahlia Diaries newsletter, which I send out mostly monthly and has general updates and exclusives and behind the scene bits. I've got an interview with Lettice Davenport I need to write to send you. Things, just bits that you won't get anywhere else. And I'm on Instagram. I'm technically on Twitter and Facebook as well, but I'm mostly on Instagram. And the Facebook page, I think, copies things over, and I do check on there as well. And I would love to chat to anybody who wishes to come and chat to me, because then I can stop writing and chat instead. And that would be great.
Thank you so much for ending our first day of Cosy Fest.
Thank you so much.
We shall be back at 3, 5 and 7 tomorrow. And I've looked forward to this for weeks. So thank you so much. It's been really lovely talking to you, Katy.
Thank you. It's been so much fun. And I'm looking forward to talking all things Agatha Christie with S.J. Bennett and Victoria Dowd tomorrow. That's going to be fun.
Thank you.